I wish good things to you who's watching this. I am Alexey, and this is the last Carcassonne Champions League match of the month. I said that already yesterday, but today's match was also scheduled at a short notice, so we get to enjoy one more high-level encounter. In January, Ervin Gal of Romania will be playing Anatoly, known as Samuelsson from Ukraine, so derby of Eastern European neighbors. Should be interesting, both also very fast players. Ervin Gino as the fastest master in the world, and Samuelsson doesn't maybe have such a reputation, but in fact he's really not that far behind. So we're expecting some very fast move, and we will try to keep up with it. Before we start, we can glance at the tournament table, and this match does have a lot of importance. So Samuelsson with 3 wins in the first 3 rounds, Ervin with only 2, and basically if Ervin wins here, he will be tying for first place. Together with Samuelsson, there of course is still 1 round to spare, so a lot of things can happen, but the match now will be important for the tournament standpoint, not only for these two, but for several other observers, especially for the current second place holder in the group, my teammate Napamai, who will probably be rooting for Samuelsson rather than Ervin G. If Samuelsson wins this match, then of course with 4 matches, 1 in 4 matches, he will be guaranteeing a qualification spot, but not only for himself, also actually for Napamai, who has a better tiebreaker than Ervin G. And then if that were to happen, the 3rd place in the group would actually be up for grabs, because with a couple of wins, either Portgard or Juha Hanemi can still technically qualify. So the match was scheduled for 2 minutes ago, so I will presume that it has started. And this is exactly the case. So it started 1 minute ago. As you can see, both players equal in rating. Both, of course, have achieved their 700 threshold for Master. Ervin a few months earlier than Samuelsson, who did so more recently in 2004. Hi Hugo, hi Andres, hi Nepamai, hi Wisemaze, hi Devaka, hi João. Do let me know who you're rooting for. Well, I know who Nepamai will be rooting for, but curious to hear also from everybody else. So far, the Romanian player with his green meeple is doing pretty well. With 12 points on the scoreboard. As you can see, I'm not sure, maybe my face is covering it, but in the chat they're saying, Ervin is cheekily saying that he has no supporters. Well, do let us know. Do we have any Romanians in the chat, or any fans of Blitz Carcassonne, or just supporters of Ervin in general? I mean, he seems to be doing pretty well without support anyway. 10 points on the scoreboard is something that's great to start the game with. He goes for an early farmer, which he often does. I am a bit concerned that this field could be restricted. It's only 3 points now, and maybe with something like a horse tile, somebody can take 3 points, restrict a few green squares. But if Samuelsson completes his city, if Ervin maybe builds a 4-point road round over here, then this field will grow to 9. So a reasonable investment of a meeple. In the meantime, the Ukrainian only has 2 points on the scoreboard, but already several construction projects waiting to happen. So he's only a little bit behind. And with a couple of tiles, he will be recovering these meeples soon enough for sure. He's now thinking a lot what to do with this monastery, and it is indeed not obvious. On one hand, you maybe want to go over here and support your city meeple a little bit, control this loose road end, but the disadvantage of this move is that a tiny percentage, but not 0% of the time, this monastery gets blocked, maybe from here with something like a horse tile, and you're giving your opponent quite a lot of green squares for the future. So maybe one of these 2 squares would be safer, but no ideal monastery placement. So if you go over here, it is 3 points. You're also controlling a loose road end, which is nice, but instead he chooses to go for 3 points over here and immediately runs into trouble, as Ervin is super happy to equalize one of his cities, also delaying some movements near Samuelsson's monastery. Really an annoying move to deal with. It's not impossible to deal with. So for example, Samuelsson with his splitter could just go over here, take 4 points for the city, leave Erwin with a city threat, but it's something that he can deal with later, maybe by going over here and invading it again. Or just letting Erwin to build up and help with his monastery. Instead, he doesn't even bother, he simply wants to finish his city at the bottom, starting a new one, so going for the move which scores immediate points. This is also a good heuristic to live by if you're ever not sure about which of your several candidate moves to play, then just pick the one which gives you the most immediate points. Erwin with a second farmer. And now the 4-point road that I mentioned before, trying to develop this farm, but Samuelsson now sneakily builds up around the second farm of Erwin and not only threatens himself a big city, which Erwin will need to attack for sure at some point, but also severely restricts Green's field. And now after this connection over here, Green will only have 9 points in this field where he has already invested 2 meeples. This is 4.5 points for meeple, which is really not a lot. So Erwin will need to work hard to try and make his field work. Maybe he will need to go here, 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 build up the road like this, and then get 6 points like this, having a lot of green squares, and so on and so on. It still could take a while. All of that could take a while. And in the meantime, Samuelsson is just scoring. Erwin finally finishes himself his 4-point road, gets back the lead on the scoreboard, but only by 2 points this time. Samuelsson, with a Dorito tile, decides to block his own monastery, but threaten another 12-point city. It is also still technically possible for Samuelsson to get a splitter tile and make this meeple live, and then he would have a bit of a majority, points majority in this monastery versus city mini battle, but it is much more likely that Erwin would draw something like a crossroads or even a simple curve to go over here and prevent that idea. Erwin is now trying to attack Samuelsson's city off screen, also exerting additional pressure on this square, which the Ukrainian now protects. Erwin is now threatening his 8-point city at the top, also putting additional pressure on this square with the intent of blocking that square in the future. And in fact, it is quite likely to occur, given that only one vanilla city cap tile is available for this square. There's still 2 splitter tiles available, so plenty of options, but now Samuelsson will probably be forced to defend. But how exactly do you defend? It is not obvious at all. So if you go over here, you save the city towards a 50-50 chance. Then you have only this one vanilla city cap. The upside of this move is that this square cannot be blocked at all. It is completely protected. But the downside is that you're no longer able to use these parallel city caps, which are in fact twice as likely to be drawn than the vanilla. The other possible move is to go over here, simply limiting blocking options, and this is what he prefers. So the upside is that you still get to keep this option, the parallel city caps that Erwin just drew, but there's still one of those remaining in the deck. The downside of this move is that there are still 4 blocking tiles, which Erwin now... Really? I was gonna say which Erwin now draws and he can use to block that square completely, but Erwin really wants to take those points. So this tells me that he perceives himself to be behind, but was that really the case? I'd really like taking out that city meeple. Maybe he's banking on the fact that there's still more blocking tiles available. There are actually still 3 crossroads available, but Samuelsson still has multiple ways of recovering his city meeple. He can either get one of the 2 city caps that we described, but there's also a third way. He can get himself an extender plus a starting tile. So playing with fire a little bit, although it does work in the short term because Erwin gets 4 points. He also takes out a city cap, which Samuelsson would have used, but now Samuelsson still has plenty of uses for the city cap. He could maybe go over here, start putting pressure on this square, And then if Erwin does draw a crossroads to block red city, then red will be able to block green city over here in response. Another option is to maybe just try and run away with this completed city. It surely must be tempting to just add a city cap and then pray for another city cap on the next move. It's not a move that I necessarily like making because there's still plenty of big city tiles such as Field Doritos and 3 cow tiles, 1 cow tile rather, with which he can invade, so that's why he goes for the blocking move. But a move which I would have preferred as Samuelsson was simply going over here, and covering up the city and trying to maybe finish it with some sort of Dorito plus triple city combo. So not a bad move from Samuelsson, but I think a bit of a miss. Now, he's getting quite restricted over here. In fact, it is not at all likely that the Ukrainian would be able to complete his block. In this situation, Erwin most often does recover successfully, but Erwin is now trying to break Samuelsson's city. Not sure if the Ukrainian should do anything about it. Maybe just score somewhere. Just take 2 points in one of the many locations. Just choose the location which shapes the board most to red's liking. An interesting move is actually to go over here. I think it's also really strong. So we invade the road. We hope to get one of the 5 remaining curves soon enough, and then we share Erwin's road and get ourselves a 9-point monastery and 2 meeples back. And the added damage from that move against green is that it completely unboxes his 9-point field. At the moment, Erwin can still develop this field by getting this curve plus the straight line sequence and getting himself the green squares. If you go over here as Samuelsson, a move which I start increasingly liking, and he goes for it, What a find here from the Ukrainian. Erwin now tries to get quick points and expand his field at least a little bit. Samuelsson with a difficult decision. He does get a curvy tile, but instead he first chooses to equalize the city over there. Not a useful tile for Samuelsson. In the meantime, Erwin invades the city, and he still has a meeple to spare, so maybe overrun this city. Samuelsson is just adding uninspiring points to his monastery. Erwin still does not want to block this meeple. What is going on? Okay, I understand in the previous move, but what's wrong with using a crossroads for blocking? Now Samuelsson gets, first of all, he gets 2 immediate points, which is already completely equal to what this guy just got, and he's now still threatening to complete his city. I think that the Romanians simply had forgotten about the existence of his city, so really some unexpected moves here. Hi Vyacheslav, I see that Ukrainians turn up in great numbers to support their countrymen. Hi Kolpnik, hi Vitaly, hi Girapa, the sole supporter of the Romanian. Samuelsson with a road monastery decides to use it for a defense, so that's a nice use of this tile. So now it is harder for Erwin to find some sort of tile which would block the square completely. He still does not find it. Probably looking to now go over here, perhaps, pre-building a long road. He's definitely not going over here because this would help the Ukrainian protect his city. Samuelsson with a curve. Finally, he's going to get his meeples back. Now it is 2 meeples per side. A hefty scoreboard advantage for the Romanian. He gets a starting tile to increase the advantage even further, but There is still one more starting tile remaining in the deck for Samuelsson to complete his city, which he will be endeavoring to do, but 6 points for now, only -6 on the scoreboard. Erwin successfully blocks Samuelsson's city, but Samuelsson keeps scoring. Only 2 behind on the scoreboard. Now, I think slightly ahead overall in the game, but 5 points? No, a 12-point field for Erwin. He decides that the tempo on the field is more important than the 5 immediate points, and he might be correct. So Samuelsson probably going to go over here and invade the field. There are still a couple of curves, and by a couple I mean literally 2, remaining to attack the field. Let me just double count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, only 1 curve. So Samuelsson doesn't bother. He simply wants to take a 6-point field, and Erwin now tries to invade the big city at the bottom. While Samuelsson draws one of his possible invasion tiles, and with only 3 tiles unseen to him, now this is where he should be taking his full 2 minutes and 40 seconds to calculate out this endgame. So what does he need to draw in order to win? Is there even a win? So let's presume that Erwin does not draw a tile for invasion, and this is, I guess, his idea. He just simply scores 3 quick points. I did not count tiles as quickly as my opponents did. Maybe Erwin was trying to invade the city with only 1 tile remaining. I'm not sure if he needed to do that, actually. Maybe just taking out the scoring spot over here was best. Because Erwin is doing very well on the fields. Like, did he even need to try and invade? Because now I think that Samuelsson can just go over here, score a 5-point monastery, no? Which should put him a bit above Erwin. Erwin does have a lot of fields, but some city and monastery points should help the Ukrainian compensate for that difference. It's gonna be really close. Hi, Glavier. So what is that last tile which Erwin holds in hands? It does not really matter, because it's not going to change the choice of 5-point monastery for Samuelsson. He was just double checking whether there were many more lucrative spots, and there weren't. So it should be really, really close. I have not quite figured out the score as quickly as these 2 opponents did in their head. Against, we're witnessing some of the fastest players in the world, and I just saw a frown emoji from Erwin in the chat, which suggests a certain outcome of this game, but let's double check indeed. Oh, this has to sting! This has to sting so hard. It is a tie, and Samuelsson wins the game because he's the second player and Erwin was first, and so because of the statistical advantage, the win in case of a tie is awarded to the second player. And it does indeed look like an misplayed endgame from Erwin. He had complete control of the situation, and he just placed a tile over here, wasted a meeple for just 1 point for only a 50% chance of an invasion, didn't win the coin flip, a coin flip which he didn't have to flip for in the first place. Like literally any other move, maybe just scoring 4 points over here, or you know, maybe meepling some sort of road, anything would have completely worked for the Romanians. So this is one of those instances where speed does not pay off, which is something that he acknowledges in the chat. Now it makes sense. So Erwin is saying that he miscounted tiles, which is not something that actually happens very often. So he does usually count quite fast, and I think he was assuming that there were 2 tiles for invasion. But you know what? Even if there were 2 tiles for invasion, okay, so this brings your probability up from 50% to 83%, so 5 and 6. But then, is 83% even good enough? I kind of felt that he had moves which ensured him a 100% chance or near 100% chance of winning simply by just making some sort of scoring move. not necessarily taking the city cap, but maybe just going for a road or something like this. And in that case, he probably wins not 5 out of 6, but 11 out of 12. Because the only sequence, like if Erwin just scores a couple more points, the only winning sequence for Samuelsson, and we're assuming if Erwin's count were correct, if they were a Dorito, the only winning sequence for Samuelsson would have been to first draw the horse and only then draw the triangle, the hypothetical triangle which didn't exist anyway, for connecting. And this would have been only an 1 in 12 chance, as opposed to 1 in 6 of simply drawing both of these key tiles in any order. Yeah, so that's actually very interesting. Like towards the very end of the game, those win percentages sometimes work in a counterintuitive manner. So if you invade the city and create a threat, you actually are less likely to win than just doing nothing and assuming that your opponent is going to invade the city. In any case, maybe they try and count a little bit more precisely, or maybe calculate the endgame a little bit more deeply. But I doubt if this is going to help him, because the position is just amazing for the Ukrainian. He is 11 points ahead on the scoreboard. He has an extra monastery. Erwin has a bunch of vulnerable meeples. Well, okay, just one. So the Romanian will now be trying to climb this one from behind, and he chooses to do so by initiating a fight for a big city, probably as good a move as you're gonna make. As Samuelsson, you're probably liking your position, especially after this meeple is nearly blocked. So probably looking at a move something like this, simply to purely block the square, which would still make you lose the city in all likelihood, but at the very least the city will not get completed. And then, despite Erwin's point majority, even if it's like 15 or 20 points, Samuelsson can easily use his long-term meeple advantage to just build a big field or something and run away with this game. So let's see which approach he chooses. I will not be surprised to see a move like this, simply trying to put some pressure on this connection square. Would be a bit more high variance, but a high equity move. So Samuelsson choosing the low variance approach, simply making sure that this city, which he eventually is likely to lose, is not going to get completed. Erwin is, I think, tilting. Yeah, it just appears that maybe the Romanian is not in the best mindset today, or maybe the home turf advantage actually works. You just see all these Ukrainian fans and you get intimidated. Because I don't think he normally make these moves. I mean, normally he's much more precise at tile counting, and normally he wouldn't really help his opponent with his monastery, even though it actually has some ideas there. Look also what an unfortunate tile draw for Erwin. He got a monastery and there were no places on the board where he could use the monastery tile without hurting himself. So this move was also hurting himself because it made his own connection square more vulnerable. Luckily for him, it ended up not mattering as he drew a connection tile regardless on his next move. But his other options were not great. If green were to go over here, he would be exposing this square. If he were to go over here, he would be exposing this square. So regardless of if he were to place this monastery, he was bound to hurt himself. So really not the best tile draw here. Samuelsson with a Dorito with a road tile, thinking between a couple of moves. Move one, sort of like the most normal move, is just going over here, completing the city connection, getting the extra point, dropping a farmer, then not allowing Erwin to get a curve and drop a farmer himself with tempo. The downside of this move is that it would be giving Erwin a meeple back, and Samuelsson decides that he wants to exploit that temporary meeple advantage a little bit longer. And so he goes for a farm himself, also pre-builds an evil hamster spot next to his monastery. Actually, that's something that benefits Erwin a bit more than Samuelsson. I think I've talked about the intricacies of 8-point versus 9-point monastery spots in some previous streams. There was notably an interesting game between Chile and Taiwan 2 weeks ago. Samuelsson with 10 points on the scoreboard, but Erwin successfully connects and overtakes the big ruin and gets himself a 5-point road in the process. Samuelsson with the evil hamster spot, and with that, I believe a win in this match. It's something that will be incredibly difficult to come back from. And it seems to me that Erwin just is not in a fighting mood today. We can already see a message in the chat. A emoji which speaks more than 1,000 languages. Samuelsson now is also going to keep scoring and scoring. That's one way to do it, just get himself a 5-point road. Another way, which would have been my preferred way, was simply going over here and threatening a 10-point city. There was a third way, going over here, equalizing the cities and dropping a farmer. But you know, when you're up ahead 28 points on the scoreboard and 2 meeples, then really just take your pick. I wouldn't say that the game is lost for the Romanian, because the city scores upwards of 20. And maybe he can still get his road meeple back, because there's still a dagger that goes here. Maybe a 6-pointer over here. Maybe a 5-point road to recover himself here. Like, there's still some options. But he would need to start drawing fantastic tiles back to back soon enough in quick succession. A straight line for Samuelsson decides to exert some pressure on Erwin's road. I would have probably preferred a scoring move. Erwin going really desperate, dropping a Gustavo Arruda style farmer. If you all remember a legendary Brazil versus Taiwan match in the 2023 World Team Carcassonne Online Championship. Do let me know in the comments if you do remember that match. Except that in that match, that farmer was really calculated and justified and so on. This seems to be a bit of an act of desperation because it's easily blockable, but maybe this is the kind of desperation that Erwin needs. So he's certainly not a player who is afraid to take risk. And this is the main difference, or one of the main differences between experts and masters. Samuelsson just keeps scoring, gets himself a 5-point ruin, still 20 points and 1 meeple ahead. I see that Hugo is suggesting an interesting move for the previous game, which is something that we're going to look into after. I really want to come back to that endgame and analyze it a little bit more. Erwin now successfully unlocks his farmer, now only 1 tile away from equalizing the main field. Samuelsson takes 3 quick points. 23 ahead on the scoreboard. Erwin with a straight line, presumably connecting to the field, setting up some other field attacking opportunities. And with 2 meeples, it is just doable. So he has 1 meeple to score quick points and another meeple to use on the farm. Samuelsson with a parallel city cap set. Probably looking to start a new city somewhere. You really don't want to make a high variance move if you can help it. A move which I seem to like is just going over here. Nah, not really. There isn't really a move which I'm super inspired by with this tile. Like, regardless of where you place it, you give something back. Whether it is an 8-point city up for grabs, so maybe you want to start a new city over here, then Erwin could get a couple of city caps and get himself an 8-point city like this. If you just add a point to yourself, it exposes a field connection platform which your opponent can use. he decides to start, yeah, he decides to go for a farm, but this is great news for Erwin because he now can score a little bit and then try blocking that square. And now, using the fact that we have equalized in meeples, we can maybe cook something from the Romanians' perspective, but Samuelsson has covered up that square and dropped another farmer. So he really wants to overrun that field, and it does make sense because there's still 3 tiles that left into that square. And still a couple more tiles left to fill in this one. But one of those tiles, actually the last tile that's available for this square, is drawn by Erwin, so this is no longer a threat. No, Erwin! Just count those tiles for once. That's a really tilt move. Just not scoring 4 points, allowing Samuelsson to score, and at this point, yeah, really the Romania appears to be a bit prematurely demoralized, because like this move, even though it's a good move, it actually gives some chances. Like with 3 city caps, with 3 vanilla city caps, which he doesn't get, Erwin still had a chance to outscore, for example, overrun the main field, leave those 2 farmers stranded for 3 points, which is why it was so essential to actually use this tile for scoring. It was not to allow Samuelsson these sort of shenanigans with the splitter. Because the thing is, after this move, even if red were not to draw the tile that fits over here, then red would have been just happy with 2 6-point fields. On the left, they score 12 points. Together with the scoreboard, they'd sort of give him enough of a lead that should be insurmountable, but now we just simply going to see the last 11 tiles of this match, not only this game. The advantage of red on this field combined with the scoreboard is truly insurmountable. I don't think there is a tile draw in the world that would allow Erwin to overcome this. But let's try and dream. Maybe a tile over here, city cap for scoring, curve or crossroads to get a meeple back, and then somehow 3 more farmers to not only equalize but also overrun the main field. Maybe. In that case, maybe we're talking, but we're talking about a probably 1 in 300 chance, if not less. So the reason why this move is so unfortunate, because it is clearly a miscount. Now, Erwin was trying to block the entry of this leftmost farmer through a starting tile. One thing that he did not take into account, that this was the last starting tile, because all the other 3 are already on the board. So there are 2 possible reasons other than nerves and tilt to explain this sort of miscount. The first possible reason is that it is easy to miscount a tile which you already hold in hand, because you're typically looking at the board, you see, aha, 1, 2, 3 starting tiles, so there must be 1 remaining, and you just forget that the 1 remaining is in your hand. The other possible reason is that when you're counting tiles, it is easy not to notice 2 of the same tile which are nearby. So I see that these 2 starting tiles are together, and sometimes your brain just counts them as one. Erwin does drop a farmer, although it is not the move that you really want to be playing. You want to, I guess, first try and get a meeple back and then drop farmers, because the farm in and of itself will not be enough for Erwin. However, maybe there's another idea. So let's say if he successfully invades with this farmer, and then the other idea is something that Samuelsson has just prevented. If this tile weren't here, then green could draw something like a straight line or a curve, drop a farmer here, and then connect through the shared city, through the last remaining road Dorito tile like this, like, and this would give himself a meeple back to score a little bit more, or maybe even drop a 4th farmer. In the meantime, Samuelsson is scoring whilst also trying to restrict field entry points. Erwin is discarding a straight line. Maybe a move like this was in order, trying to just go for more farmers. I'm sure that Samuelsson is calculating, and he will make sure to cover up any possible invasion squares. Not that there are many in the first place. Well, maybe there's a bit of a curve plus curve opportunity at the bottom. Maybe he could take that out. It really depends on the exact nature of the remaining tiles. I can see with my naked eye that there are still a couple of curves remaining, and by a couple I mean exactly 2. Welp. Okay, we can see definitely the miscount for Erwin, so he's still hoping for the starting tile, which does not exist. So it's simply the same mistake which occurred earlier. He was thinking that there's a starting tile remaining, and then acted on it before, and now he's doing the same, whereas probably what he should have done is maybe going over here, dropping a farmer. This would not have worked because Samuelsson happens to get the last curve anyway. But we're going to see a big point difference here. So we're going to having ourselves a short stream. Not the shortest ever. That honor still goes to Matej Tabak, finishing 3 matches against, I believe, Dani Angelats, 3 games against Dani Angelats in just 30 minutes. Here, Samuelsson appears to be thinking a little bit, which helps him win in this case. So red gets a 5-point road. Green gets himself an enormous ruin for 19 points, and that was indicative of his non-zero chances in this position, but Samuelsson's field invasions were just a little bit too much. That vanilla city cap was indeed a game ender and a match ender in this case. 21 points is the score for the field. Even if Erwin were to equalize, this would not have been enough, so he actually needed to either overrun the field or find some extraordinary scoring opportunities. Probably... Now, after red get this amazing start with monasteries and quick points, as green, I probably acknowledge that my win percentage is fairly low here. So as green, I probably want to play the game in such a way that induces mistakes from my opponent. So maybe I want to score a little bit. I want to like make a semblance of attacking the farm, and then I would really want for Samuelsson to overreact, drop like 3 0-point farmers, and then I can suddenly shift my focus from farming to scoring, and maybe outrun by my opponent from a couple of points. So something like this. I'm not sure if it was possible with the given tile run out, but maybe inducing a mistake rather than just simply trying to go for the objectively best move was a possibility for Erwin here, but very difficult position. He just seemed to not have mentally recovered after that first painful loss via draw. But at the end of the match, the only thing that matters is not even the score. It's just who won and who lost. And in this case, Samuelsson will be winning 2-0, so I congratulate Anatoly and all of our Ukrainian fans. Hi, Helge. And yes, the match is over. I mean, we're looking at some of the fastest players in the world, so what could we expect? Before we have a look at this tournament situation, which is pretty interesting, because Erwin G, regardless, still has some chances to qualify for the playoffs, and he's still technically in 3rd place. I just want to address some comments from Hugo a bit earlier about this move over here. So actually that was a really nice suggestion. So what Erwin could have done, it could have simply gone over here, just preventing a city invasion without even meepling this, and then used his last meeple to score 3 or 4 points. And there's certainly a way of possible thinking, but then we also need to remember that from Ervin's standpoint, he had miscounted the tiles, and he was thinking that there was both a Dorito and a vanilla, no. Not a vanilla, but a horse tile. So then from his perspective, this attacking opportunity was also possible. So maybe from green's perspective, red could get a Dorito tile, invade the city over here with a horse. But even then, this move actually does accomplish something, because let's say if you just place that tile over here, then because there are two invasion up possibilities in this city, then you've just halved the number of winning tile draws for your opponent. So if this tile is not here, Samuelsson can draw a horse plus a Dorito. So a horse here, Dorito here, or a Dorito plus a horse. So Dorito goes here and a horse goes here, invading like this. And so then by placing a tile over here with whichever orientation, that actually makes sure that your opponent has, well, that your opponent needs to draw the two key tiles in a particular order, giving him not a 1 in 6, but a 1 in 12 winning chance. So this certainly would have been a useful move as well. From Ervin's perspective, this move gave him a 1 in 6 winning chance. Now we know, of course, that it was only a 50% winning chance because he had miscounted the Doritos. But even if you didn't have miscounted the Doritos, then invading the city when you're ahead only gives you a chance of winning 5 out of 6 times, whereas there are ways how you can win this position 11 out of 12 times, which amounts to like an 8% difference. 8 percentage points is kind of a lot at this level. Yeah, so it's very interesting how these invasion or non-invasion decisions are made and how they influence the win probability. That the same move, like the less aggressive version of the same move without meeple, actually wins you 8% more often than the move in the game. So yeah, well, you learn something every day. Well, Wise Maze, there's no intention, there's no schadenfreude intention here. We're just analyzing endgames dispassionately and learning. So I guess then if I'm going to say that instead of Ervin, I should just be saying green. It's not Romania and Ukraine, it's just green and red. So very abstract position. This is also the way how you want to analyze your own games, because I know that some players are reluctant, and also that includes myself sometimes, although I think I've gotten over it, are reluctant to analyze their losses, because then you kind of need to relive either bad tile draws or your own bad decisions. But I've noticed that it is much easier that when you analyze a position, you kind of speak in chess terms, where you just say, not like Carlsen and Nakamura, you just say black and white. So when you look at this position, you typically just say the names of the colors. And this is what also I try to do in Carcassonne. It's just green and red. Anyway, this is just me trying to talk a little bit more about the game, because our stream lasted such a short amount of time that some more Carcassonne talk is just something that I need to get out of my system. But anyway, enough about the game. So Ervin should not be too disappointed. I mean, they are still in 3rd place, and if they win the last match, then they definitely qualify, or maybe not so definitely. Actually, let's have a look at this. So who Ervin needs to play? So Ervin lost against Nepamai, won against Juhahanemi, won against Portgard, lost against Samuelsson. Warta. Warta is the one remaining player. Now, the Brazilian will have some motivation, but since with 0 wins, I believe they don't have realistic chances of qualifying. I mean, in order to qualify, they would first of all need to win both of their... Actually, no, I think they still can qualify. Interesting. Anybody can qualify. So Warta, if they win against Portgard tomorrow, then if they win both of their next matches 2-0, they're suddenly, with this statistic, 2 matches won, 3 matches lost, 6 games won, 6 games lost. And since their next match is against Ervin, well, if they just win against Ervin, they will be having the better tiebreaker no matter what. So the Brazilian players should be motivated. Now, also, in order for qualify, they need some sort of a favorable outcome from these players. But since Warta is already playing Portgard, he can win against Portgard, denying him a good tiebreaker and denying them a match win. So actually, it seems to me that if just Warta wins his next 2 matches, and if he does so 2-0, then it almost doesn't matter how these other guys score. Okay, maybe it matters a little bit. Because Juha Hanemi, if Juha Hanemi wins 2 of his next matches, which I'm not sure if it's even possible, or maybe they already played this week. Okay, we need to look at that in a second. Okay, like, we're gonna make sense of this. We're gonna make sense of this. So, I first of all want to go to the main page and see if Juha Hanemi has played today. Oh yes. So Nepamai won against Juha Hanemi, so that was 2-0. So this actually is great news for Warta, because Juha Hanemi is now at 1-3, 3-7. So this means that if the Brazilian just wins his next 2 matches, it truly does not matter how these guys play. Because Juha Hanemi can still win 1 match, but his tiebreaker will still be bad. And if Warta wins, then his tiebreaker will improve automatically. So this is also some fascinating stuff. So look at this. The player who is last in the group can still actually qualify. Now, as for Ervin, the situation is significantly easier. He just needs to win 1 match. So if Warta wins against Portgard, then the last match of the group, which is going to be next week in round 5, Ervin versus Warta, will be simply for the 3rd spot in the playoffs. But for now, we need to congratulate Samuelsson for clinching the 1st place in the group with 4 match wins in 4 matches and a great tiebreaker of 8 games won and 2 games lost. But you also need to congratulate Nepamai, because it appeared that his 2nd place with 3 matches won and 6 games won is also pretty much uncontested. As for these 4 players, I think theoretically anybody can qualify. For Juha Hanemi, it's probably... Yeah, for Juha Hanemi, it's actually impossible. Or is it impossible? No, it is not impossible. So they need to hope that... It's so convoluted. So they need to hope that Portgard wins Warta and Warta wins Ervin. I think that's the situation. But in any case, based on who has played each other and who hasn't, the lowest chances of qualifying are not for the last player in the group. It is for the penultimate player in the group. And for Warta, it's just simply about winning the next 2 matches. So this is how I made sense of it. Now I'm looking forward to being corrected in the chat. Let me see. So Nepomai is still in the running for first place. How could this occur? So Nepomai has played... Oh! So Nepomai is playing Samuelsson, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and then it's actually quite easy. If Nepomai wins against Samuelsson, Nepomai is in first place. Well, not necessarily. Okay, so the tiebreaker. So, okay, so 4-0 and 3-1, 6-2, 8-2. So what happens if Nepomai wins against Samuelsson 2-1? Then he's going to have 8-3. And Samuelsson is going to have 9-4. In which case, Samuelsson is going to win because they have the same difference of +5, but Samuelsson has more games won. But one thing I need to remind you, I need a reminder from you all. So there are multiple tiebreakers. The first tiebreaker for the players with the same number of match wins is the difference between games won and games lost. Then there are two more crucial tiebreakers. One is the absolute number of games won, in which case Samuelsson would be favored over Nepomai. And the next tiebreaker is the mutual encounter. And in this hypothetical scenario, Nepomai would be favored. So I just forgot which one of these tiebreakers were primary. Okay, actually, it's saying tiebreakers were at the bottom of the page. Oh, yes, there we go, there we go. Yeah, so in this scenario, Samuelsson would prevail because the number of games won is in fact taking precedence over the mutual encounter, which is tiebreakers 4 and 5. But really, with only two players having the same number of matches won, 4 and 5 is just the same tiebreaker, really. Ooh, but this is also very interesting. So the fifth tiebreaker, the difference in points scored in confrontations between players with equal results. And this is something that I want to ask you. Okay, perfect. So Sergey is in the chat. So I want to know. We had a game yesterday on stream where one player conceded the game. And they conceded the game, saving themselves a large number of point spread. So they ended up losing -23, whereas if the game were actually seen until the end, they would have lost something +50. So if one of the players concedes the game, which technically isn't even allowed, then how is the point difference calculated? Now, it is so unlikely that we're going to come to that moment because point difference is like the fifth tiebreaker. But if it is on the list, then eventually, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but the year after that, we're going to have a situation where this fifth tiebreaker matters. Yes, I agree that points should not be used in Carcassonne, but then I think that still it is better than a random draw. Because a random draw is like you're just 1970s football, is just really giving up and leaving everything entirely up to chance. Well, anyway, so this is the tournament situation. I'm glad to know that I've got the gist of it, as convoluted as it is. So just be sure to follow us in week 5, which starts a couple of days from now. But before that, there is a piece of content which is going to be uploaded today, so stay tuned for that. Say a pretty big one with a lot of game analysis. Then tomorrow we're having ourselves multiple streams. So I will definitely be able to show you Hydra Baby versus Kraukle. The first time, actually, we're going to feature this Lithuanian player to a considerable length of time. In all likelihood, I will also be able to show you MTU versus Leo da Vinci, the Polish master versus a top 8 finisher of the Mind Sports Olympiad. Then, Game Over versus Isloon, quite important for the Group B tournament standings. And then, at around 21:45 UTC, our first ever Catan stream, the playoffs of the Mind Sports Olympiad Grand Prix Catan tournament, with a special guest, of course. So make sure to tune in that, and then you can roast me about my Catan knowledge or lack thereof, at least compared to Carcassonne. So this is the plan for tomorrow. We're having ourselves quite an eventful day. Make sure to subscribe unless you already have, and to meeple the like button for the algorithm. And then that's gonna be it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you soon.